Quick question. What's the first thing you do in the morning? Chances are, you check the time. Maybe on your phone, maybe on your smartwatch, or maybe on a wristwatch. But here's the crazy part. For most of human history, ordinary people couldn't just check the time. In fact, the very idea of carrying time on your wrist would have sounded absurd. Today, we're diving into the fascinating journey of the wristwatch, from massive clock towers that ruled entire cities, to pocket watches carried by gentlemen, and finally to that tiny ticking machine on your wrist. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll never look at your watch the same way again. Because this isn't just about keeping time. It's about how humans learned to control time itself. Let's rewind a few centuries. Before wristwatches, before pocket watches, before even personal clocks, time was public. In medieval Europe, the church bell was your alarm clock. Giant towers rang out the hours, not for individuals, but for entire towns. Imagine living your whole life with no idea of the exact time. You woke up when the sun rose, worked until it set, and followed the rhythm of bells. And here's a wild fact. Back then, time was local. Noon in one city could be 10 minutes different than noon in the next. People lived by solar time, meaning wherever the sun stood in the sky, that was your clock. The idea of a personal timepiece? Completely unheard of. But here's the twist. In the 15th century, technology began to shrink. Suddenly, time wasn't just ringing from towers. It could fit inside your pocket. Fast forward to the Renaissance. Advances in spring-driven mechanisms allowed clockmakers to miniaturize time. The result? The very first pocket watches. At first, they were clunky, inaccurate, and incredibly expensive. Only kings, nobles, and the wealthy elite could afford them. These watches weren't about punctuality. They were fashion statements, symbols of wealth and sophistication. By the 18th and 19th centuries, pocket watches became more reliable and more common. Railroad conductors, soldiers, and businessmen depended on them. In fact, railroads in America played a huge role in pushing for accuracy. When you're running hundreds of trains across thousands of miles, being off by 5 minutes could mean disaster. And so, the pocket watch became a man's constant companion, tucked into a vest, attached by a chain, checked with a sense of pride. But here's the question. If pocket watches worked so well, why did we suddenly strap time to our wrists? The answer starts on the battlefield. Believe it or not, the first wristwatches were actually designed for women. In the late 1800s, companies like Patek Philippe made delicate, jeweled wristlets, more jewelry than technology. Men? They dismissed them as feminine, preferring the serious, traditional pocket watch. But war changes everything. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, soldiers realized pulling out a pocket watch during battle was clumsy and dangerous. They needed something fast, hands-free, and durable. Enter the wristwatch. Soldiers began strapping pocket watches to their wrists with leather bands. Watchmakers quickly caught on. By World War I, wristwatches weren't just accepted, they were essential. After the war, veterans kept wearing them in civilian life. Suddenly, what had once been feminine became practical, masculine, and modern. The wristwatch revolution had begun. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because wristwatches didn't just tell time. They became icons of style, technology, and even status. From the 1920s to the mid-20th century, wristwatches became an art form. Swiss brands like Rolex, Omega, and Longines competed to push the limits of design and precision. Think about the innovations. Rolex created the first waterproof watch, the Oyster. Omega watches went to the Olympics as official timekeepers. Later, NASA astronauts wore Omega Speedmasters on the Apollo missions, meaning the wristwatch literally went to the moon. But it wasn't just about engineering. Watches became fashion. The thin elegance of a Cartier, the rugged appeal of a military-style Hamilton, the luxury sparkle of a Patek Philippe. Your watch wasn't just about time, it was about identity. By mid-century, wristwatches were everywhere. From boardrooms to battlefields, from Hollywood stars to factory workers, the wristwatch had gone from novelty to necessity. But then, in the 1970s, disaster struck. The wristwatch industry faced its biggest crisis yet, one that nearly wiped out centuries of tradition. Enter the quartz revolution. In 1969, Seiko introduced the Astron, the world's first quartz wristwatch. Instead of delicate gears and springs, it used a quartz crystal powered by a battery. The results were shocking. Quartz watches were cheaper, more accurate, and easier to maintain. Within a decade, Swiss mechanical watchmakers were collapsing. Thousands of traditional watchmakers lost their jobs. The once proud Swiss industry was on the brink of extinction. For everyday people, though, quartz was a blessing. Suddenly, accurate, affordable watches were available to everyone. Timex, Casio, and Seiko flooded the market. Digital watches added alarms, calculators, even music. The wristwatch had changed forever. But just when it seemed the mechanical watch was dead, something surprising happened. The wristwatch became more than a tool. It became a symbol again. In the late 20th century, luxury watchmakers reinvented themselves. Instead of competing with cheap quartz, brands like Rolex, Patek Philippe, and Audemars Piguet leaned into heritage, craftsmanship, and exclusivity. A Rolex wasn't just a watch, it was a status symbol, a piece of history on your wrist. At the same time, the digital age gave rise to the smartwatch. Apple, Samsung, and Garmin turned the wrist into a mini computer. Your watch could now track your heartbeat, guide your workout, show your messages, even make payments. Today, the wristwatch sits at a crossroads, timeless mechanical beauty on one side, futuristic smart technology on the other. And yet, both exist together, proving that even in the age of smartphones, people still love the feeling of time strapped to their wrist. So, what does the wristwatch revolution teach us? It shows us that time isn't just about hours and minutes. It's about culture, fashion, technology, and identity. From towers that told entire cities what time it was, to soldiers glancing at their wrists in the trenches, to astronauts wearing watches on the moon, the wristwatch tells a story far bigger than itself. And here's the irony. Today, most of us check the time on our phones, but millions still buy wristwatches every year, not because they need them, but because they want them. Because sometimes, wearing time on your wrist feels like holding history itself. If you enjoyed this journey through the hidden past of everyday things, hit that like button, share this video with someone who still loves their watch, and subscribe to Common Curiosities for more untold stories. Because history is closer than you think.